let's go to Knoxville. Those of you who have been listening to him know how good he is.
Gentlemen, how we doing?
Oh, continue.
I was playing a little Rocky Top there. I was using all double stops. Those that play know what I'm talking about. Let me get in the shot. Let me get in my own shot here.
Yeah. He's got his Philadelphia Flyers jersey on.
Kelly will admit one of the great logos in all of sports.
But you've definitely given up on the Phillies already.
Well, usually when you get eliminated, Kelly, the way this works is usually when we get eliminated, you give up on your team, Kelly. I don't know about you. You probably still think Will Levis is a great player, so go for it.
Whoa. Man, hey, it's a hard profession there, Tony. You know that.
No doubt about it. Nico's learning how hard.
It's not easy.
Hey, Nico's learning how hard this thing is. Thing's hard. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, since you brought it up, do you think he's taken a step backwards in the last 2-3 weeks?
I mean, how could you not think that, George? I mean, he's obviously taken something backwards. He doesn't look like the same guy that he was. What we can't figure out is how he looked so instinctive in the bowl game and how he looks so seemingly lost now. It's very strange. Very strange.
Did you worry about this at all, Tony? Because George asked the question yesterday, has he regressed? Did we get ahead of ourselves in putting him to a level that maybe he wasn't quite at yet?
I've apologized, guys, 100 times on the air for some of the things that came out of my mouth about him, and I've learned a valuable lesson. And the lesson is football is not played 7-on-7. It's not played in camps. It's not played in practice. It's not played in spring practices. It's not really even played in bowl games. It's played when you get in these seasons, all things are equal. And when these offensive coordinators at this level have a chance to scheme you up a little bit and do what they're doing, they're taking things away from them now. And everybody's doing it. You know, the rush 3, drop 2, drop 3 safety, drop everybody back, force you to throw underneath, force you to make decisions, try to confuse them from where the pressure is coming from. And you factor that in with an offensive line where pass blocking is optional, and it becomes very difficult. I mean, this is a very difficult proposition because now what you have is you have a young guy that's in his own head, and the people I talk to at Tennessee say that they're extremely concerned about how his recognition, they thought he was further along. They thought he was further along in camp than what he's showing. And they just thought he was further along, period. And quite frankly, now he's just not. He's just not there.
Tony, what a difference 2 years makes. Think about the lead up 2 years ago to the Tennessee-Alabama game, which is one of the, 10 best all-time college football games I've ever seen.
Yes.
Some of you will remember 52-49. And this time around, it kind of feels like neither team's real certain of what they are. Certainly, Bama's got some defensive issues, gave up 40 to Vandy, 25 to South Carolina. And Tennessee feels like a deal that you don't know what to think.
Tennessee's got a great defense. And
that is true.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And if they would just have gotten average offensive play, they'd be number 1 in America right now. You stop and think about it. I mean, their defensive line, this Pierce guy the other night, it's like Florida Mertz is getting ready to score a touchdown. He just takes the ball and rips it out of his hands. So that's what championship football. That's that old Baltimore Ravens stuff back in the day. Here, let me have that. That's mine. That's mine. That's not yours. That's mine. And that's what championship players do. And that's just making a football play. Heupel's so confident in their defense that he went for it 4th and short on his own, inside his own 20-yard line?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how mummy football. Like, who does that? Well, you do that when you know that this team in the first half scored 3 points with 4 trips inside my red zone. 3 points. I mean, these guys are astoundingly good defensively. They're going to face a team this week, though, that's going to challenge that, because I think this Williams guy is going to be the best receiver they've seen. And depending on the game when you see him, I mean, he made a couple catches against Vanderbilt. He looks like he's a part of a video game. He doesn't look real. And my analogy is to Deshaun Jackson when he was a Cal. That's who he reminds me of. Little guy. It's like you're controlling him. It looks like you're toggling him around with a joystick. I don't know. Tennessee has not shown the firepower to stay with these guys. However, Alabama is one of the more heavily penalized teams in college football. They're right there with the Vols. Their quarterback's regressed big time. I don't know what's going on there, but he has. And it looks like Vanderbilt shook them, George. Vanderbilt shook that club. If Vanderbilt was, not Vanderbilt. Yeah, Vanderbilt. If South Carolina was a little better, Carolina would have won that game. If they believed in themselves, they probably should have won that game. So it's going to be really interesting this week what happens here.
So we know, just because there's no other way around it, whoever loses Saturday will have 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to open up the whole, can an SEC team with 3 losses get the committee to say, no, your schedule is that much better, we're putting you in? Do you think a 3-loss SEC will get in this year?
I think there's a chance that that's going to be the scenario, because Ole Miss already has their 3rd loss, already has their 2nd loss. They're going to suffer another one. Georgia loses Saturday, George. They might have 3 losses by year's end. Tennessee loses. They might have 3. Alabama loses. They might have 3. 4 teams from this league are going to go to the playoffs, guys. 4 teams are going to go. I mean, you can sit there and look at it. They're not taking 3 teams out of the SEC. And the reason I say that is, if you look at the big, whatever they want to call themselves, they only have 3 playoff caliber football teams in their league. Penn State, Ohio State, and Oregon. The rest of that league is what they are. I mean, sure, Indiana's probably going to end up 10-2. Does a 10-2 Indiana team go ahead of a 9-3 SEC team?
That's a really good. I don't think so either. But it's a really good question.
Yeah. Or I guess the only thing that could screw that up, the 4 teams from the SEC, if somebody ends up 9-3, that 4th team, like you're talking about, or there's a couple there that are 9-3. The one monkey wrench is you get in that Big 12 game and somebody upsets somebody for the championship, or Clemson runs out there and gets an undefeated Miami. Has Miami lost? They haven't lost, have they?
No,
they have not. No.
If Clemson beats an undefeated Miami, do they put them both in? And I don't know the answer to that. I guess we'll have to see that.
Man, I said it yesterday, because each week I'll try to do my own pairings.
Yeah.
Of what, everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
And this was mine going into this week. Can you imagine a Tennessee, Clemson, and Knoxville? It just was this is how I saw it. But can you imagine, given that the way they both recruit a lot of the same kids against each other?
George, these people that don't like the playoff, this is what George has. George has Ohio State, Boise State. I love that Genty guy. I love him. Or maybe one of those service academies gets that spot. Maybe an Army or somebody like that, because they're excellent right now. And they're kind of in a Vandy way, the way they teams don't want to get on the field with them. They just don't.
Right.
Penn State, Alabama is a classic college football rivalry. I grew up in the Joe Paterno, Bear Bryant days in Pennsylvania, and those were insane games in the 70s and 80s. The old Sugar Bowl in 78 back in the day. Gooman, and then Barry Krause went high and stopped him on the goal line. History lesson for all the kids out there.
78 Sugar Bowl.
Georgia and LSU out there, I mean, what could be finer? And then Tennessee, Clemson in Knoxville. I'd sign up for that, George.
Yes. I think the TV networks would too.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly, I didn't mean to keep you out of this. Say hello to Tony Basilio.
Harry Krause, man, that is a blast from the past. A former Indianapolis Colt that I used to do interviews with, man. That's pretty awesome. How
Is that
about
right?
you?
Wow. Small world,
How,
man.
how about you? Another thing, Tony, is we've got to get this off our chest. Are you going to hire somebody that went to the school Ave Maria?
You know,
Do you
I
even
heard
know where
you
that is?
hazing, and you really need to quit hazing that kid because, first of all, he's a Vanderbilt fan. He's part of Nashville royalty. His grandfather's Nashville royalty. And you need to leave him alone, man, or I'm going to come down there and I'm going to give you a Sicilian hug. And you don't want a Sicilian
Come
hug
on.
from me.
Hey,
Wow.
I'll text you. I'll text you my number. Come on, because we're not going to get a Sicilian hug. We're going to get a Lincoln County fight is what we're going to have.
Well,
Okay.
By the way, we have it scheduled for the day before Thanksgiving, Tony, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Oh.
Kelly, if you know what he means.
Oh, I do know what he means.
The
I think I know what
Flyers
he
will
means.
be in town.
There you go. Hey, so tell me this, Tony. We talked about it, and I know you talk to people in the building. That's kind of discouraging to me. Like some people are really, they're not upset, but they're really concerned about Nico. And what it reminds me of is I'm going to say this because I've told y'all how hard it is to play quarterback. I played it, and it's really difficult. But he just seems like he's a 7-on-7 guy. He's made his living at 7-on-7, and now it's a full team, 11-on-11. Guys are starting to get in his mouth. Guys are starting, and he don't like it a little bit. So it seems like they're trying to kitty glove him around, and it seems like that's what Josh Heupel is doing. But that's kind of concerning when you hear from somebody in the building or somebody that's close to the organization saying that it's concerning to them.
Well, yeah, and what I got is he was not as far along as they thought he was.
Yeah.
The way college football is done in the offseason, it's really interesting because they've mirrored the pros.
Yeah.
You don't hit in the preseason anymore. What I think is really interesting about that is I see how you can get away with that at the professional level because you're dealing with a more finished product.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's smart. I'm not second guessing anybody. This is what all these guys do because they're trying to keep their kids healthy, and I get that. I don't know if you think about Nico for a second. Like you say, the 7-on-7 and the high school stuff in California and some of the traveling and the things they did. It's just not the same as playing at this level. We know that. We've seen way too many 5-star guys not work out. Way too many. And so what's interesting is that I wonder if they had a chance to do it over again. Do they let him play more in September instead of pulling him out of those blowout games? Do they hit a little more in the preseason and try to get him used to the speed of what you're going to see? I don't know if you hit him. I don't know. I'm just asking that because it looks like they're way more of a work in progress, just from what I hear. They're way more of a work in progress at that position than they thought they would be at this point in time. There were things that they assumed about him that so far haven't come to be. Now, it doesn't mean they can't be. It doesn't mean the lights won't come on for him. It doesn't mean that he won't turn into a very good player in time.
Right.
But I never thought, and more to the point, they didn't think we'd be at this spot right now. They just didn't.
So I asked you last week, and I'm going to ask for our new listeners on the radio here. We talked a little bit about parity, and everybody's talking about parity, but is it I'm still trying to figure this out. Is it parity? Is it teams not as good as we thought they were, or is it this monstrous SEC schedule that George has talked about where they have 3, 4, 5 big games in a row? That's tough to deal with in college, but what do you think that is? What do you, because I watched the South Carolina-Alabama game. South Carolina defensively is pretty good now, and you're right. If they got a little confidence in themselves, they probably end up winning that game the other day. But is it just, I know Alabama's going through a transition period with Nick Saban, one of arguably the greatest coach ever, but is it parity? Is it not as good, or is it the scheduling that's coming right now in the SEC?
Well, obviously the schedules are really hard because you don't get off weeks in this league. When you look at the quote unquote bottom of the league, and you know, people look at Vanderbilt and they say, well, bottom of the league. I mean, that's bottom of your league. That's a credible football team. That's a credible football team running a very good offense. that hits hard on defense. That's not going to be an easy win for anybody. Mississippi State the other day was getting pulled away from by Georgia, and people that bet that game were thinking, I'm cashing my ticket. When it was 34-3, when it was 41-31, people were going, what in the world's going on here?
That's right.
And that's the bottom of the league. I think what you see in this conference, and I think you're starting to see it in college football now, I think defenses are catching up to offenses. And what I mean is great defensive line play is always going to travel. It's always going to travel. Texas A&M has all kinds of issues at quarterback. They do. I think they've got a great chance of making the playoffs because they're great defensively. Tennessee has quarterback issues and offensive line issues right now. They do. Nico's got issues. I mean, it is what it is. Do I think he's going to be very good in time? Yes. Is he very good right now? No. But when you have a defense like Tennessee has, you have a shot to make playoff. And the truth is, that's the league right now. You mentioned it. South Carolina has not one, they've got two guys that are professional football players at defensive end. And they come from both sides. I mean, and they're hammering people. Kentucky's got a great defense.
Yeah.
This league is full of great defensive players. And my belief is it's going to continue to be that way because it's the closest thing to NFL football. And these guys want to get in a league that challenges them. And even the bottom teams in the league are going to have very good players going forward. And I really honestly believe that. And that's what you're seeing. You know, the saying is any given Sunday. It's any given Saturday in this league right now. Anything. You could tell me any result from Saturday with Tennessee and Alabama, and I'll believe you. Any result.
Because
they blow the Vols out. Vols blow them out. Close game, won by either team. One team turns the ball over 3 or 4 times. The other one doesn't. Whatever you want to give me, I'll say, okay, that's very possible.
George, I know you're going to say it just means more. Go ahead and say it.
It just means more. I mean, you know.
So Tony,
kind of like down there at Lake Mary where Billy, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that, Billy. My bad.
Hey, I was reading something, and this is like a little thing, but it can turn into a huge thing with is it the Pilly? Is that how you say his name? P-I-L-L-I?
Yeah, Keenan
Pilly.
Pilly.
Yeah, he gets injured. He's out for the year, but now, I mean, he's obviously. I know that they got James Pierce, but he sounds like that he may be the leader of the team or the defensive side of the ball, and Arian Carter or the Jeremiah Tellender guy is going to have the radio headset in his ear, and they're going to have to communicate, which they haven't done.
That's
how big of a hole is this Pilly guy leaving for the University of Tennessee's defense?
You can speak to the signaling end of the plays and all that stuff. I'm sure they've worked on that with a multitude of guys. And the reason I'm sure they've done that is Pilly had terrible injury issues and has throughout his college career. And if they weren't planning for that, then shame on them, you know, because to think that he was going to last the full season, you know, that's a tough ask. The thing about him is Heupel has tells, you know, like the other night he was banging after the game, he was banging on the podium with his notes they give the coaches, you know, the stats of the game and all that. When he was talking about his offense, he does that when he's frustrated. He also coughs a little bit when he gets frustrated. I take his money in poker. I'm telling you that right now, and I can't play poker. But he really couldn't play poker. The thing about
you've gone too far. If you're studying that, you've gone too far.
Well, yeah, George. When you're on the air 5 hours after a show till 3 o'clock in the morning, yes,
we're going to talk about that before you get off.
Well, we're not splitting an atom in my studio anytime soon. So I've got to study what I'm going to study. The thing about Pilly is he's a heart and soul leader, and he flies around on the football field, and he set the tone for that.
Yeah.
He set the tone for that. He's their guy in space, man. He was their guy that got guys on the ground in space. He didn't miss many tackles. He was having a very good year. And now they don't have him for half a year. It's going to be he's very hard to replace, no matter who gets the headset.
Billy, when was the last time you sent Tony a resume?
It's been a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, Billy,
Ave
Kelly,
Maria.
if Kelly keeps hazing you on the air, I'm gonna show him something.
Sicilian
Mm.
hug.
Sicilian hug. Okay, for those who don't know it, perhaps this is the first time you've heard Tony. Incredibly entertaining. We love having him on. He will do a show Saturday when the Tennessee-Alabama game's over, probably 6:15 Central, 7:15
Yeah.
Eastern, that
Yeah.
is incredible. Tell them about it.
Well, and also, if you're coming into town for the game, we're going to be at Calhoun's on the River on Friday, so come out and see us.
Great place.
Show's on from 11 Eastern till 1, and we'll be down there. I stay on the 1:30, whatever. I'm my own boss. I can quit whenever. But the point is that, once my head starts hurting, and then we're going to be playing music down there that night, which is another story for another day. George, tclub.team is where folks can find me. We are going to be on the air after the game on Saturday, and jubilation and pandemonium is going to reign throughout the land when the Vols protect that turf.
Okay.
Kelly,
We'll
you
see.
sound really convinced.
I don't know if I'm convinced. They've had troubles over the past 17 years with the Tide, only beating them one time. So we'll see.
No, you're cherry picking numbers.
I'm just telling you, that's the truth.
Cherry
Big dog.
picking. Cherry picking.
A Sicilian hug. I'll give you a Sicilian hug.
Yeah.
Okay.
George, who do we cheer for in the baseball playoffs? I was asking one of my baseball buddies that today.
The
I
Mets
can't watch this NLCS thing. I just can't.
The
I can't
Mets
look at it, George.
The Mets and the Indians.
There you go. Indians. I like that. Old habits die hard. Yes.
Guardians.
Lane Thomas hitting that grand slam the other day that's a Knoxville kid.
Yeah. I didn't know that.
One hell of a player. Buddy of mine, his kid played travel ball in the area. He said, I saw a major league player last night. And I said, oh man, all these guys think their kids are major. He goes, no. I saw this kid named Lane Thomas. He told me he was 14. He said he's playing Major League Baseball. He said he was hammering the ball as a 14-year-old. So that's a neat story to be in Washington playing out the string and to be in the middle of that thing in Cleveland. That's fun.
Yes. Yeah. Good for him. I just heard that story a couple of days ago that he was from up there, and that had me fired up. He's a good player. And you're right. Only the fact that he was buried with the Nats, where you get no pub. Yep. Very underrated player.
Yep.
Thank you as always.
Thank you, guys.
Sicilian hug for Kelly the day before Thanksgiving.
Don't need it. Sorry.
Tony, I'll explain that in a phone call to you later.
See you guys. Thank you.
Okay. He is the best. He is Tony Basilio. Love having him on every week.